What if Zenitsu actually lived up to his full potential? Would he be able to become a Hashira? Additionally, what if he were able to learn sun breathing and combine it with thunder breathing? And how would this eventually change the events and outcome of the story of Demon Slayer altogether? Zenitsu's story begins the same, with Jigoro Kawajima training the scared little boy to become the successor of thunder breathing. Despite being a crybaby day and night, Jigoro refrains from going too hard on the boy, even comforting him over his inability to master thunder breathing and telling him that perfecting his single move is good enough. Not too long after the incident where Zenitsu is struck by lightning, his training is interrupted one day when a strange man bearing two bandage blades on his back arrives at Jigoro's property. This man is none other than the sound Hashira, Tengen Uzui. Jigoro believes that unlike himself, Tengen will be able to whip Zenitsu into proper shape and be hard enough on the boy to help him get his less desirable traits under control. Unnoticed by the old man, however, this only deepens the rift between Zenitsu and his sibling pupil, Kaigaku. Whereas in canon, Kaigaku sees Zenitsu as a failure and a complete waste of oxygen who doesn't deserve their master's time, here he is much the same. The only difference is that his contempt for Zenitsu is further exacerbated by the envy he feels. Why is this worthless kid given not only the love of Jigoro, but also special treatment in being trained by a second Hashira, one in his prime no less? As in canon, Kaigaku slowly strays from the path of righteousness and falls to his darker desires. But this time, he has another wish, to kill Zenitsu and show him just how undeserving he truly is. Meanwhile, Zenitsu spends many months under the sound Hashira and undergoes a massive change. Though it takes a lot of time and a lot of beatings by Tengen, followed by lectures from his wives, Zenitsu grows accustomed to his new routine. By living in such close proximity to his mentor's extraordinarily beautiful wives, he slowly becomes desensitized enough to not become a drooling mess every time he lays eyes on a pretty girl. Through his time with Tengen, he owns his sense of hearing to a level that nobody could have ever predicted. He eventually gets to the point where he's capable of maneuvering through everyday life using his hearing alone, not even needing to open his eyes. In battle, this is even more of a boon, as no being can hide from him. For those familiar with Daredevil from Marvel, it's similar to how hyper-enhanced his hearing is, to the point of being able to hear a single heartbeat and isolate it from the sounds of a busy hub from miles away. It reaches a point where even Tengen, with the skills of a master shinobi, is unable to mask his presence and heartbeat from Zenitsu's ears. They know this because attempting to sneak up on his future Tsuguko becomes a pretty frequent pastime for the Hashira, and one he's never successful at, much to his annoyance. All of this is secondary, however, to the mastery Zenitsu finds himself attaining over his breathing form. Thanks to the rise in his self-confidence from all his time with Tengen and the Hashira's own brutal training methods paired with Jigoro's advice, Zenitsu slowly but surely learns all 6 traditional forms of thunder breathing. Despite his mastery, Zenitsu for the most part sticks with his first form due to having the most experience using it and feeling that it's the most suited to the fighting style he develops, which consists of overwhelming his opponent with pure speed and fast-paced slashes from every direction. Now, it's important to note that while he does mostly stick to his first form, the Thunderclap and Flash, Zenitsu is able to use the others to create many more openings, making it possible to land his preferred move. This is not to mention how much stronger the first form itself is when wielded by a slayer with such a deep understanding and mastery of his element breathing form. When the time comes, this much stronger version of Zenitsu sets off for the final selection with the blessing of both his masters, though Kaigaku is suspiciously nowhere to be found. At the mountain where the final selection takes place, things are for the most part the same as in canon, with Zenitsu and Tanjiro being in different parts of the area and never crossing paths, allowing Urokadaki's pupil to get revenge for his sibling students. At the peak, when the passing slayers arrive to choose their oars, Zenitsu is the one to stop Genya from harming Ubuyashiki's daughters, as he's faster, though he acknowledges Tanjiro for stepping forward to do the same. In this version of the story, it seems that all is going perfectly for Zenitsu, his life being better than ever. However, when he returns home to Jigoro after the final selection, it's to a scene that brings his world crashing down around him. There, in the courtyard where they so often train, Jigoro is face down in a pool of his own blood as rain pours down from the darkened sky above. Standing over the old man with his sword coated in the blood of their shared master is none other than Kaigaku. Although the Zenitsu of the past would have given in to his despair and broken down on the spot, this more mature version stands in place, barely holding himself together as an unspeakable rage overtakes him. Before he acts, he only asks Kaigaku one time why he would do this. Just like in the fight they have much later in the canon storyline, Kaigaku starts spouting off about how Jigoro deserved nothing less than this for daring to show any preference towards a worthless weakling like Zenitsu instead of himself. Kaigaku is in the middle of a rant about how he'll prove himself superior here and now when he suddenly hears the word thunderclap. That's the last thing Kaigaku knows as Zenitsu stands behind him, back to his senior and blade held before him. Seconds later, Kaigaku's head slips off his neck and the traitor is dead, with his first kill being his own senior, a human no less. Moments after finding his beloved Gramps dead as well, Zenitsu is overcome with with emotion, and finally breaks down. As he sits in the mud, wailing to the crying heavens above, lightning arcs wildly to the earth, and its thunderous roars of anguish can be heard across the country. The next morning, Zenitsu buries his master and Kaigaku side by side. Though he hates what Kaigaku became, he remembers the few moments of happiness and the great respect he held for his senior. What happened here is a secret he plans to take to the grave, though his heart is forever scarred with the knowledge of just how cruel even humans can be. With the understanding of how humans are no less capable of cruelty, Zenitsu finds himself pitying demons, who at least have the excuse of being unable to live without consuming human flesh. He sees them as sorry creatures, unknowingly mirroring the thoughts of Tanjiro on the matter. With the death of those he held closest to him, Zenitsu finds himself sinking into a deep depression, causing him to carry out his daily routine completely on autopilot, and neglecting to even write to his second mentor, Tengen. For his part, Tengen is concerned about Zenitsu, but trusts that his student must have his reasons for not contacting him after passing his selection. After receiving his Nichiren blade, Zenitsu makes his way to his first assignment, to extinguish the life of the demon known as Kyogai in the mansion where he inevitably meets Tanjiro. Unlike canon, Zenitsu and Tanjiro meet up at the house itself instead of the road, owing both to his current mental state and his more mature personality. While Tanjiro is instantly worried by the deep sadness he can smell emanating from Zenitsu's core, he decides to leave it for later, as the children's brother is at risk, and time is of the essence. The events that play out inside the mansion are much the same as canon, since Zenitsu's senses are muddled from the emotional turmoil he's feeling. The only exception is that Zenitsu takes charge of protecting the boy left in his care and takes out the demon they're confronted with without any need to fall asleep first. Again, similar to canon, yet at the same time all too different, Zenitsu calmly and resolutely stands before the box holding Nezuko and defends it from Inosuke. Despite being able to tell that there's a demon inside, his recent experience makes it impossible for him to denounce someone just for what they are. Owing to his negative mental state and superior skills, Zenitsu actually beats Inosuke down, and the two are only forced to play nice when Tanjiro exits the mansion and pushes them apart. Just like the main story, Tanjiro pulls the others together, acting as the glue of the group, but the relationship between Inosuke and Zenitsu is much more that of rivals than anything else. After their arrival at the wisteria-crested home where the group spends the night, Zenitsu learns of Tanjiro and Nezuko's situation. Upon hearing of and even seeing a demon who clearly holds no evil in her heart, Zenitsu is struck by the juxtaposition between Nezuko and Kaigaku, letting out a sad smile. Moved by the righteous soul Tanjiro possessed and having his faith in the inherent goodness of people restored, Zenitsu vows to help the Kamado siblings accomplish their goals and become a demon slayer his gramps can be proud of. It doesn't hurt that he has a bit of a crush on Nezuko either, though he's able to keep that under wraps. With our group finally together, we move to the next major event in the story, the battle at Mount Natagumo. Unlike in canon, Zenitsu shows no hint of the cowardice that was once such a large part of him. Constantly bickering with Inosuke behind Tanjiro, the group heads up the mountain together. Now, for the first time, the others get to see just how impressive and powerful Zenitsu is, as he manages to hear the mother demon's movements when she's about to kill all the demon slayers under her control and frustration. Thanks to his superior speed with the usage of thunder breathing, Zenitsu manages to cut every last one of the string right before she can do so, and proceeds to use Godspeed to close in on her location and decapitate her. Because of his swift action, he hears the sadness in the demon's heart the same as Tanjiro would have in another life, and he helps her pass on peacefully. Despite him essentially taking Tanjiro's place here, Zenitsu isn't the one to face Rui, as that little whack job shows up then and there to make the first move. Tanjiro, who followed Zenitsu, asks to face Rui himself upon learning just what the boy has done to create this false family of his. That fight plays out pretty much identically to canon at Tanjiro's request, while Zenitsu uses his hearing to hone in on both the poisonous spider and the father demon, taking them out before they can react with his overwhelming speed and power. His actions that night severely embarrass Inosuke, who feels frustrated at how far behind his rival he is. Unlike Kaigaku, though, Inosuke responds to these feelings by vowing to surpass Zenitsu soon instead of denouncing him. Once again, Zenitsu feels the wounds in his heart being healed by the words of his new friend, and he finally accepts that Kaigaku was never the kind of man Zenitsu had hoped he was deep down. With this, he's able to free himself of the last dregs of guilt over what he was forced to do and races towards Tanjiro alongside Inosuke. Since their opponents were taken down so quickly by Zenitsu, they're able to reach the site of Tanjiro and Rui's battle right towards the end, and Zenitsu gets to witness Tanjiro tapping into the Hinokami Kagura for the first time. Absolutely awed by the power and Tanjiro's ability to shift between breathing forms, Zenitsu finds himself wondering if perhaps he too could wield those flames one day. With that, the Mount Natagumo arc is complete, with only minor changes from the main storyline, but a whole different set of problems to deal with afterward. During the meeting of the Hashira, where Tanjiro and Nezuko are being judged, Zenitsu is more than healthy and capable enough to hear the whole thing and rush to their aid. Naturally, Inosuke does the same, having thrown himself deep into training over the past days to catch up to his rivals. With both demon slayers on site to defend defend Tanjiro and Nezuko, the Hashira are taken aback by the unwavering loyalty shown by these two. Tengen, in particular, is surprised to find his student so fired up and decides to vouch for him as well. When Sanemi insists on showing everyone Nezuko's true nature, Tengen only needs a single nod from his student to know whose side he's on, and the two Hashira come face to face, ready to trade blows. From there, though, Ubuyashiki shows up to defuse the situation, and Sanemi ends up testing Nezuko as he does in canon. Afterward, while Tanjiro is taken away for his rehab, Tengen takes Zenitsu to a private room to finally learn what the hell has been going on with him. Face to face with the second man he's ever called master, Zenitsu can't help but let loose a few tears. He may be well on his way to healing, but the scar left by his Gramps' death isn't one he can just be rid of. Upon learning of Zenitsu's situation, Tengen shows an uncharacteristic soft side and offers to get him some time off back at his home. Zenitsu wipes away his tears, though, and tells Tengen with a warm smile that he's found people he wants to stay with no matter what. In the days that follow, Zenitsu asks Tanjiro about the flames he used against Rui, and Tanjiro is prompted to think about them in more detail. Throughout the rehabilitation period for Tanjiro and Inosuke, Zenitsu goes on solo missions since he's still healthy, and he learns whatever Tanjiro can think of about the Hinokami Kagura during breaks, as well as mastering total concentration constantly. From there, we move on to the Mugen train arc. Unfortunately for Tanjiro and Inosuke, Zenitsu is sent on a solo mission just a day before they set out for the Mugen train, which leads them to board it without their thunder-breathing friend. Without Zenitsu on board to help with protecting the passengers, both Inosuke and Tanjiro are forced to do that job, and no one is left to go after Enmu. Eventually, this forces Rengoku to take matters into his own hands and protect the whole train so they can end things. But with the added pressure of this monumental task, Rengoku ends up losing one of his arms before Tanjiro and Inosuke manage to take out Enmu. Though the train is saved, Rengoku is no longer in any condition to fight, and Tanjiro and Inosuke are just as beaten down from their battle. Because of this, when Akaza shows up, the group is forced on the defensive, unable to even put a scratch on him. Rengoku puts up a valiant effort, even unleashing his final breathing form, but with only one arm, his strength falls just short of being able to threaten. It's because of this that the utterly terrible event to follow is able to happen. Since Rengoku isn't able to seriously threaten Akaza, the demon manages to knock him out and forcibly transform him into a demon with his blood. Once that's done, he has no one to stop him from killing Tanjiro as per Muzan's commands. Before Tanjiro, Inosuke, or Nezuko can make a single move, Akaza is between them, one fist embedded where Tanjiro's heart should be, and the other swiping his Hanafuda earrings. As the eldest living Kamado falls to the ground, time seems to slow down. Then, in a sudden burst, lightning flashes, not from the sky, but from somewhere several miles in the distance, parallel to the ground. Zenitsu comes roaring at Akaza after hearing Tanjiro's heart stop. After returning from his solo mission and hearing how dangerous the Mugen train is, he rushed straight over to help his friends. But for all his strength, for all his speed, Zenitsu is too slow to save the man who gave him a reason to live again. Though he manages to close the distance, he finds his blade unable to cut into Akaza's neck, and the demon simply smirks at him. Desperate to avenge his friend, Zenitsu flashes back to everything Tanjiro has told him about the Hinokami Kagura and the demonstrations he gave him. Shifting his stance within a fraction of a second, Zenitsu settles into a form somewhere between his own and Tanjiro's. With the speed of his thunder breathing combined with the power of sun breathing, Zenitsu's blade slices clean through Akaza's throat, the demon realizing too late that he's finished. Afterward, Zenitsu collapses from the strain of what he just did right next to Tanjiro, and the Kamado is able to share some final words with the group. He tells all of them to never blame themselves for what happened here. He tells Nezuko that he loves her and wants her to live a long and happy life as a human before he sees her again. He tells Inosuke to always stay true to himself. And to Zenitsu, he tells the boy to learn sun breathing in his place, to continue the legacy of the Kamados and live life righteously the way Tanjiro has always known Zenitsu wants to. And finally, to take his place as Nezuko's protector and find a cure for her. As Tanjiro's body falls still, Zenitsu is filled with a mixture of grief and determination. With Tanjiro's words echoing in his mind, he swears to honor his friend's dying wish and commits himself to mastering sun breathing. Despite the pain of loss, Zenitsu finds a renewed sense of purpose. He is resolved to protect Nezuko, honor Tanjiro's legacy, and fight with a heart full of conviction. With heavy hearts, the group returns to the Demon Slayer Corps headquarters. Zenitsu, carrying the weight of his promise, begins intense training to master sun breathing, incorporating it into his thunder breathing techniques. The bond between Zenitsu, Inosuke, and Nezuko grows stronger as they lean on each other for support. The memory of Tanjiro fuels their resolve, and together they prepare for the battles yet to come, determined to put an end to Muzan and his reign of terror. As his sister and friends weep over his final breaths, none of them notice Rengoku's unconscious body, and Tanjiro's earrings in Akaza's fist have disappeared. Following the events of the Mugen train, Inosuke, Zenitsu, and Nezuko are each in a state of depression. Eventually, however, with each other's support, the trio manages to pull themselves together and throw themselves into training with a zeal never seen before. During the months after Zenitsu has begun his training in sun breathing, with the notes from Rengoku's father, he's awarded the status of Lightning Hashira, as he is the one who ultimately defeated Akaza. Akaza. Filling in the position left empty by Rengoku, Zenitsu cares little for the title and continues training himself to fulfill the goals he and Tanjiro shared. Eventually, he receives a message from Tengen saying he needs help in the entertainment district. Despite his insistence on going alone and not wanting to endanger them, Inosuke and Nezuko force him to take them along, and the trio arrive in a matter of days. There, things escalate much faster than in the main story, as Tengen and Zenitsu use their hearing to find the former's wives almost instantly. For Zenitsu, the three have become like older sisters, and he refuses to let them suffer a second longer than necessary. Between the master-student duo's hearing and Inosuke's own spatial awareness, they find the girls and face off against Daki and Gyutaro. While Zenitsu and Tengen face Gyutaro, Inosuke and Nezuko face Daki. It's during this battle that the last Kamado and the Beast Breath user demonstrate just how immensely they have grown in the past months, with Tanjiro's passing driving them forward. The two are able to catch Daki off guard, and Inosuke saws off her head mere moments into the battle, with a similar situation playing out involving her brother Gyutaro. Between Tengen and Zenitsu's combined awareness and skill, not to mention their perfect synchronization from years of training together, Gyutaro is no match for the two Hashira. Unfortunately, following the battle and the subsequent explosion that Nezuko quells with her flames, yet another threat appears. The new upper three, ranked Demon, Rengoku Kyojuro, with his memories of his time as a human forcibly suppressed and morphed by Muzan. Since they're all relatively unharmed, Tengen, Zenitsu, Inosuke, and Nezuko stand together against Rengoku, giving the former Flame Hashira the fight of his life. It's during this battle that Inosuke develops strange marks across his arm, the Demon Slayer mark itself, though they don't know this yet. Throughout the battle, Tengen calls out to Rengoku, desperately trying to awaken his memory. While this is largely unsuccessful, the sight of Inosuke and Nezuko stirs something within him, causing him to hesitate at several points in the fight. He's eventually forced to flee as dawn approaches, but before he does, he manages to lop off one of Tengen's arms in a sneak attack. After these events, Tengen considers retiring and living peacefully with his wives, but finds himself hesitating because of Rengoku's current state. Seeing his master's inner conflict, Zenitsu tells him with a warm smile that he doesn't have to worry about any of that. He can leave everything to his student from here on out. During the months-long recovery period following the entertainment district arc, Zenitsu and Inosuke train together more fiercely than ever, their rivalry pushing them both to entirely new heights. Zenitsu is even quite close to mastering sun breathing by the time Inosuke is raised to the status of Hashira for his part in taking down Daki and Gyutaro. Plus, they need the slot left by Tengen to be filled. Now, with both Zenitsu and Inosuke being powerful and accomplished Hashira in their own right, they continue to train themselves to the point of exhaustion every day. However, with neither of their blades needing to be reforged by a particularly naggy smith, there's no need for them to go to the swordsmith village. Because of this, the place is utterly destroyed, with only the chief and a few villagers managing to escape with the help of Mitsuri and Muichiro. Genya manages to survive too, but with the boy being on his own, he suffers such a humiliating defeat that he's not sure how to show his face again. With the Demon Slayer Corps' morale at an all-time low, Zenitsu decides to step up and finally make use of his station as a Hashira. After calling a Hashira meeting, he tries to do what he believes Tanjiro would and proposes what we know to be the Hashira training. In the case of Tomioka, he uses Tanjiro's memory to remind him of his promise to Sabito. With Sanemi, the promise of revenge for his presumed dead brother is all it takes. And in the case of Muichiro, Zenitsu gets into an argument with him at one point about the possibility of Rengoku's memories returning. When Zenitsu angrily proclaims that there's no way they can abandon one of their own and utters a line about such terrible acts always coming back to bite you, Muichiro is struck with how opposite yet similar those words are to his father's so long ago. With that, his memories slowly return, and each of the Hashira is on board with the training. Before that begins, the Demon Slayer mark is explained to the Hashira, though everyone is confused as to how Inosuke could get it so long after Tanjiro's passing. Where's the missing link? That's when Zenitsu reveals that ever since the moment when he slew Akaza, there has been a flame red mark, just like Tanjiro's, nestled in the groove of his palm. It's so small that he never noticed it in battle because of either his sword or spilled blood, but based on what they know of the Demon Slayer mark, he is the missing link. Later, the training begins, with Zenitsu and Inosuke both holding their own camps as well, focused on speed and instinct training respectively. Despite this, they both participate in the other Hashira's training too, wanting to grow as much as possible. Now, without Nezuko's immunity to the sun being revealed in the Swordsmith village, Muzan's forces never gather for an all-out final assault. Because of this, the Hashira training is able to continue indefinitely, or at least as long as they need to whip all their demon slayers into shape. And so, 2 full years pass. Both Zenitsu and Inosuke have come into their own, growing to become the strongest Hashira because of their never-ending drive, entrusted to them by their late comrade. Zenitsu has even managed to teach Inosuke the first stages of sun breathing, though the beast-breathing user finds it too taxing to use over his usual style. During this time, Nezuko has grown proficient with her own blood demon art as well, and the demon slayers have hunted down several lower moon, each new group being replaced faster than the last. The final notable event of this time period is when Zenitsu and Inosuke team up with Muichiro and Mitsuri to hunt down the upper demons responsible for the destruction of the Swordsmith village. With how powerful they've grown and Zenitsu's mastery of his new style, solar thunder breathing, the demons stand little chance, going down before they can even activate their gimmicks. Throughout this, Zenitsu has been sending each of their blood to Tamayo in Tanjiro's stead, working towards the cure for Nezuko. At the same time, these 2 years have not been pleasant for Muzan. Constantly losing every one of his lower ranks, he's been unable to fill the empty upper ranks, leaving only Nakame Rengoku, Doma, and Kokushibo active. And of those, he can't even trust one of them, as Rengoku has constantly been showing signs of reaching for his lost memories in secret. Though Muzan believes this will be a fruitless attempt, not to mention, without Nezuko's secret being revealed, he's growing more and more mentally unstable at the lack of a cure for his intolerance to the sun. Though they're not aware of that last bit at the time, this works out perfectly for the Demon Slayer Corps, because after 2 long years of training, they have all been deemed powerful enough to face off against Muzan and his elites. And so, the Corps, led by Zenitsu, Shinobu, and Gyomei, invades the Infinity Castle, completely throwing Muzan's forces for a loop. What follows is, unfortunately for them, an absolute massacre. The Corps' 2-year-long training with the sole purpose of killing Muzan once and for all has propelled each of the Hashira to levels not seen since the age of the first Sun Breather himself. Demon Slayer marks in place, Mitsuri and Obanai take out Nakame faster than she can react. Before her body can fully disintegrate, the Hashira extract her blood and send it off to a person unknown to Muzan, Yushiro, and the entire Infinity Castle bursts up to the surface while collapsing. The level of knowledge they have on Nakame's location and powers instantly sets off alarm bells in Muzan's mind, and he has an idea of just how this has happened. Similarly, Doma is struck down by Shinobu, Gyomei, and Sanemi in a furious exchange that leaves him completely dismembered and headless as he disintegrates away. At the same time, Zenitsu, alongside Inosuke and Tomioka, faces Kokushibo and Rengoku respectively. Though the battle is hard fought from all sides, the solar thunder-breathing Zenitsu has mastered is far too powerful and versatile to be matched. Before long, he has Kokushibo on the ropes. On the other hand, Inosuke and Tomioka have purposely been avoiding causing any damage to Rengoku, doing just enough to hold him off while calling for him to wake up. Back with Zenitsu, for all his power and skill, he's still human. As such, the instability of the Infinity Castle causes him to unexpectedly stumble during a vital slash. Right when it seems like it's all over, Kokushibo is halted in his tracks. From the middle of his throat now protrudes the blade of none other than Rengoku. With the weakened upper one falling victim to the unforeseen backstab, it's explained that Rengoku actually awakened to his original memories almost a full year ago. Or rather, a part of it. His desperation to know his true self and his clashes with the Corps resulted in Rengoku's mind splitting into 2 personalities. One, the upper 3 demon of Muzan with a troubled heart. The other, Rengoku's original self, wishing to end this terrible existence however possible. With his alternate personality shielded from Muzan's mind reading thanks to the other side appearing unconscious. He's been secretly communicating with the Demon Slayer Corps for this whole year, giving them information on exactly how to crush Muzan before he knows what's hit him. With that, the only demon left is Kibutsuji himself, and Zenitsu and Inosuke can practically feel the world melting away around them. Their vengeance, Tanjiro's justice, Nezuko's freedom, the world's freedom, it's all within their grasp now, and they'll be damned if they let that slip away. With a synchronized yell, both of the youngest Hashira take their position. Zenitsu enters the first and only form of his original solar thunder breathing that he's never revealed before, while Inosuke enters an original form he's capable of using for just 1 hit with the little sun breathing he's learned. Together, they leap forward, the thunderous sun god's death clap and the beast's blazing blade intertwining like 2 threads being sewn together. Despite his harrowed mental state, Muzan knows he can dodge this in time. However, just as he's about to do so, he feels his limbs failing to move. Turning his eyes to the side, he sees none other than Nezuko, easily maintaining her adult form and forcing him in place with a new blood demon art, total demonic blood manipulation. It's a single-use ability she's developed expressly for this purpose, with guidance from Rengoku's letters on how to reverse the control Muzan has over his cells inside others. In the half millisecond it takes Muzan to process this, Zenitsu and Inosuke have reached it. Just like that, the rivals unleash their ultimate attacks, simultaneously burning, electrocuting, and slicing Muzan down to the atomic level, fully and finally ridding the world of his tyranny. And just like that, the Age of Demons is over. Make sure to subscribe to help support the channel so I can continue making videos just like this one.